Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we are speaking with Cassandra Chandler. Hey, Cassandra.
Hi, Pat. How are you?
Or should I say Cassi? She goes by Cassi, but it's great to talk to you, Cassi. Cassi's done amazing things in her career, and we're going to go through a whole bunch of stuff today. But presently, she is the founder and CEO of the Vigio Alliance, which really focuses on culture and diversity risk assessment. And we'll go through that more in a second. Cassi's had a distinguished career as a strategist and an investigator, identifying and addressing intelligence, financial crimes, cyber and fraud risks, along with regulatory and reputational risks in the federal government and the banking industry. She's seen it all. And as I said, she's currently the president and CEO of the Vigio Alliance. But before we get into Vigio, why don't we talk a little bit about your career? Tell us a little bit about your background.
I guess when you take a look at my background, Ben, I'm kind of, it sounds bizarre, all the different things I've done, but it kind of plays into having that risk and compliance type of expectation and skills and ability. I initially started my career as a television news anchor and reporter.
Wow.
And after working in that field for about 5 years, I then went on to law school, practiced as an attorney in Louisiana after graduating from Loyola Law School. And then I went into, got at this keen interest on becoming James Bond 007. So yep. I joined the FBI as an attorney and a special agent.
Wow.
I was in that career for about, I'd say about almost 24 years, just shy of about a week shy of 24 years. And during that career, I served mostly white collar crime, financial crimes type of investigations. I also moved up the ranks to become its first Black female assistant director over some of the programs. I oversaw their training program. Mm-hmm. During the time, I don't know if you can recall, there was a lot of uproar about the FBI's training and what we were doing to move criminal agents along.
Okay.
But after 9/11, there became a huge push for more intelligence-driven type of agents. And so I was responsible for going back to the academy, refocusing the FBI Training Academy at Quantico, Virginia, towards intelligence, that intelligence mission, building an intelligence training program for individuals who were analysts, but not necessarily agents, and getting them to work together. So I did that as an assistant director, and then I was promoted into the role as assistant director of public affairs because of that old background in journalism. I like to say, I've had many, many, many careers. The most frightening and the most the career part that drove me most insane was being the assistant director of public affairs in the FBI, sometime shortly after the 9/11 fiasco.
Wow. Well, yeah, I can imagine that must have been intense for sure.
I look back over my life and I said, during that time period, I think my right leg stopped functioning properly. I had to drive using my left leg, couldn't find out what the problems were. And I lost 3 eyelashes that I woke one morning after, I think, a news story in the New York Times, and I had 3 white eyelashes. So my thing was, working with the national media in Washington, D.C. was a very difficult task.
Well, I can imagine. But I mean, what an incredible background. I mean, now that I know that I'm talking to 007 here, it's very, very exciting. It reminds me of that kind of the most interesting, woman in the world type of conversation. So this is excellent.
I have no regrets. It was just a fascinating career working in those various.
Yeah, and I can see how all that work really does somehow connect into what you're focused on now with the Vigio Alliance. So tell us more about how you're building that business and focusing really to solve some of the diversity, equity, and inclusion issues.
Well, one of the things about my background, and I also worked as a senior executive in the banking industry after retiring from the FBI, Vigio became a brainstorm with a friend of mine, and it was to take a look at building leadership and taking a look at the risk involved in the culture. And a lot of people don't realize your culture starts the first risk in a business.
Right.
So we started looking at the cultural risk, not from the compliance and risk normal expectations in the banking industry, but looking at it from a people risk, right? How people come together, how they're working together. And in doing so, in establishing Vigio Alliance, I recognized that people could thrive better when they were more diverse and talking to each other. And there was a sense of camaraderie and humanity within the business industry.
Yeah.
And so when you look at, I know a lot of people ask me, what does that term Vigio mean? Vigio is actually Latin, and it means to thrive. And so the hope was to make sure and get the employees to be that component part, right? That could thrive in the business. And then the business itself would be able to
it's so refreshing for you to talk about that, because I'd say that the last year for me has been one of these eye-opening years on the topic of business culture, because we found a situation that my business, we're operating virtually, right? And how do you maintain a culture in a virtual scenario? How do you maintain humanity? How do you kind of improve empathy? But it really, and how do you kind of maintain community as well? And I've thought more about culture probably in the last 12 months than I have in the last several years, because I think some of the things that just automatically just happened when you're in an office together,
Yes.
You really have to think more about in a remote structure. So I think what you're talking about is really important, actually, really, really important, especially with all of the things that are happening in society today as well.
I think a lot of people don't realize that although we're in this virtual time period, having the virtual relationship can be positive when people tend to not realize they're being recorded, right? If you're not saying to the employees, we're going to record this, and you give them the opportunity to talk, and they have all those little boxes everywhere. If someone starts the movement of something chatty, people have been sitting in their houses all day, they're tired of things, and then you'd be surprised how you really get to know people better, because now everybody in those little boxes are starting to talk and laugh and come up with some things that they would never normally in the bigger space in the office have done, because they were so used to that work environment feel of Now you're at home, right? And you're sitting in your kitchen or your living room, and you're still talking to the people who were there in that office with you, but now you're starting to see them differently. You're seeing them from a home perspective from the living room. So I try and build on that being at home and virtual kind of relationship, and encourage a lot more dialogue that way.
I love it. And so it says that Vigio does, risk assessment. It sounds like you guys do a lot of other things like coaching as well. Tell us a little bit more about the types of services that Vigio offers.
So Vigio Alliance offers services that allow for us to come in and take a really deep view of what is your culture. Okay. A lot of times, even the kind of words or the core values that a business pulls together and tells their employees, this is who we are, they've never really taught them how to be that. Yeah. So we go in and we discover, how does your leadership understand your culture? How do you understand, CEO, your culture and board of directors? And then we just keep moving down lower and lower and lower, so that everyone begins to understand, more importantly, what are the core values of my company? Mm-hmm. And how does my personal experience feed into those core values? And how are we now using those core values as shared values? That's a part of discovering the culture, right? You've got to get in, understand who the people are individually, and then how they come together for shared core values. Yeah. And after we do that, we do tend to go on and try and do a lot more leadership coaching to help continue to drive that relationship. That's one of the reasons why it's called Vigio Alliance. When I come in and we start the process, I don't leave until you feel comfortable that things are continuing to move and to grow, and it's sustainable, not just check the box and I'm gone.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point too, because I think a lot of times right now companies are making very quick decisions to make changes and then not really building a sustainable culture, a sustainable new model. And it's getting away from those kind of, like, I'd say, veneer solutions is really, really quite important. So, I mean, I can obviously see how this is relevant to almost all the changes we're witnessing in society today. But I mean, tell us a little bit more about how you feel Vigio plays a role in the changing structure of business.
Well, one of the other aspects about this moving towards sustainability, that Vigio also comes in and helps you discover the diversity and equity and inclusion aspects of your business. And a lot of times you'll hear people start making comments about inclusive, and I always start with, guys, hold a second. Let's first step back and understand, what does diversity really mean to you?
Right.
Because it's not, if we start looking at diversity and inclusion as something you go in and check a box, right?
Right.
I've got so many, all my stats are saying blah, blah, blah. It's not really going to change anything until diversity is a part of the hearts and minds of the individuals in that office. That's part of the culture, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Diversity, it's got to move more beyond the culture to becoming a part of that person's individual personal life. So when I come in, I don't look at it from the checkbox. I don't look at it, I've got a chief diversity officer. That's relevant to me. That's your way of doing things. I come in and I try and look at your individuals. What's your culture? How's that individual fit? And how is it fitting into the broader picture? So it's very different. And I think what Vigio offers that's different, I think, from a number of the other businesses who focus on diversity, that is that I look at it from personal experience, and from a commitment. It's not that I've gone to school and I've gotten a degree in human resource, blah, blah, blah. I've lived this. I've been the individual who grew up when schools were segregated to integrated, and saw how we connected and how we grew. I grew up at a time period when we went through a lot of racial strife, to a time when individuals became champions, right? And so I am now able to lend those ideas and examples and say, we can move from here to having a personal commitment to then becoming champions. And things will change when you do that, because now you're changing the inner core of individuals and the company and the business.
I love it. I think that there's not a business in the world, especially in the United States, that isn't thinking about these topics right now. And it kind of really brings me to my next question. There's been a huge backdrop over the last year. Not only we've had the pandemic, but it's been a moment for a lot of social change in our society. I mean, how have you stayed sane in that whole process, and where have you been able to find I use the word joy, but some type of joy in your life?
Yeah, I do think it's important for me just to say, with all of the things we've seen from the social unrest and experiences that we've had, I do work with police departments as well, and so I have an understanding of the Black community, the Asian community, people of color in our communities, and what we're dealing with from a law enforcement perspective, to law enforcement officers who truly believe that their mission is to be a guardian and a protector, not necessarily a warrior. And I try and make sure those ideas and folks understand each other, community and police, that we do see things a lot the same. Because most of the things that we receive from television, from news, from TV shows, it's the negative. So I try and come in and show that it's well beyond that. So you'll see I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of motivational speaking to bring a lot of these concepts out and help people see.
I think I really like what you're saying, because I do believe that, if we take the early part of your career in broadcasting, a lot of the stories tend to miss the kind of details that really matter, the dimensions of situations, and And hopefully, you know, through those moments, we can kind of find better solutions. You know, it's I think it's always kind of misunderstood sometimes that, you know, we see a protest somewhere and the police are definitely on their back foot, but it's not that these communities don't want the police. Every community wants a police force. Exactly. They just want a different type of a police force. So it's just kind of, I think, important to embrace that and understand that, you know. Yeah, so that's great. That's great. So tell me a little bit more about you know, some of the projects maybe that you've been able to be part of. Can you? I don't know if you can talk about that. You know, any.
I'll tell you. I can't exactly say the name.
Yeah, of course. I should have known.
But I will say this. I mean, I've had the opportunity because I spent 10 years in the banking industry. I do a lot of work still with banks. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of the diversity training type of programs with banks. And in fact, right now, one of the banking schools have asked me to put together a class on diversity and inclusion, making it personal, to take a look at that personal perspective of it. So that's fantastic. I'm also doing a lot of work, as I indicated, with some police departments and city governments that are saying, come in and take a look at our executives, you know, the police, the head of the city council, different component parts and you know, managers and so forth of the government, and see how they're using their roles to lead and influence the same type of diversity or the same type of culture. And then I'm working with businesses. Right. And it gives you the opportunity to see things now starting to come together. Here's my problem, however, and this is truth. I'm a small company, and the same kinds of things I try and do are the things that your very large consulting firms are doing. Right. So if you take a look at it, you're going to get a Deloitte as opposed to a Cassi Chandler Vigio alliance, because you believe, well, these guys have, you know, they've got all these employees, but what they're missing is that personal commitment, an individual who's lived it and doesn't look at it from a checkbox mentality. So that's one of the things I see.
Yeah, and also just the wealth of experience that you bring to the table here. I mean, this is your background from really kind of understanding the risks that companies face, and as an investigator, a journalist, and now someone who's focused on the culture and diversity space. I see how all of those come together very, very well. I can see how it's a very powerful solution. So, I mean, when you look forward, hopefully, you know, knock on wood, we're all back outside and being able to see one another regularly again soon. But what are your hopes for the future with the business and the spaces that you're focused on?
I personally would love to see this business grow. I know that what I do has a personal commitment, and the individuals I usually bring in with the business have a personal commitment, but I would love to see this style of diversity and cultural assessments change the way that we're doing it across the country and around the world, so that it then becomes that personal relationship. You start changing the business to a business of humanity. You start encouraging hope and kindness, and that's what we become. So I'm going to be very honest with you, Ben. I'm on a mission. Yeah. This is a personal mission for me. I want to see this business help change the world and change the whole narrative of what is diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Yeah. That's my hope. That's my dream.
I feel like it's what I'm hearing is that a lot of companies today are very focused maybe on like an acute problem or a need that they see, or you know, they're focused on a number or something like that. And you're really offering what I would say is a holistic perspective on the situation, and understanding that, you know, it'll evolve over time, and maybe that evolution is necessary, right? Like, I think that is kind of like quite important. And I really have enjoyed this conversation, Cassi. Thank you so much for joining us on Uncaged. We've been talking to Cassi, or Cassandra Chandler, who's the founder and CEO of the Vigeo Alliance. Vigeo Alliance focuses on culture and diversity risk assessments, training, leadership assessments and the evolution of businesses around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Cassi has an incredible background in everything from security to journalism, and really bringing all of these things to bear in this solution. And so, Cassi, thank you so much. If someone wants to learn more about what Vigio is up to, where should they go?
Just go to www.vigioalliance.com.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much. And I look forward to talking again, Cassi. Really, really enjoyed this one.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.